Have you ever just stopped and wondered what's really in the driver's seat when it comes to who you are? You know, your personality, your moods, your mental health. Is it the physical wiring of your brain, the genetic lottery you won at birth, or is it everything you've been through in your life? Well, today we're going to dive in and try to untangle this incredible mystery.
Even get started, we've got to look at this on a few different levels. I mean, look at this. You can zoom way out and see the whole brain, this amazing, complex organ. Then you can zoom in, right, into its complex networks, and then zoom in even further, all the way down to the individual synapses. Those are the tiny, tiny connections where all the magic really happens. And that brings us right back to the big question. So, what's the most powerful force shaping us? Is it the brain's hardware, or genetic software, or is it the user input? Our day to day lives. Let's zoom in layer by layer and see if we can find some answers. Okay, let's kick things off with the most obvious piece of the puzzle, brain itself. And more specifically, we're talking about the hardware that runs our entire emotional world. Say hello to the limbic system. You can think of it as the emotional headquarters of your brain. And it's not just one spot, it's a whole network of structures, all working together to manage, well, pretty much everything from fear and anger to our biggest motivations and most precious memories. This is where raw feeling gets processed. And inside this HQ, you've got a whole crew of key players. You've got the amygdala, which is basically your internal alarm system handling fear and aggression. Then there's the hippocampus, that's the librarian, filing away new memories. Hypothalamus is the great regulator, managing stress, hunger, you name it. And the cingulate gyrus, it's like the bridge, helping to connect our gut feelings with our conscious thoughts. They're all in constant communication. So what happens when this finely tuned system gets, well, out of tune? The results can be huge. Take PTSD, for example. In post traumatic stress disorder, the amygdala, that alarm system we just talked about, can get stuck in the on position. It becomes hyperactive, leading to this overwhelming fear response. It's a crystal clear link between a physical brain system and a really profound psychological condition. Okay, so that's the hardware. But where does the instruction manual come from? The code to build this incredible emotional control room in the first place? For that, we've got to talk about our genes. Now, for the longest time, we kind of thought of our genes as this rigid destiny, like a script that's already been written for us. But today's science tells a much more interesting story. Like this quote says, genes don't cause behavior. Instead, they just influence how you might react to what life throws at you. So they set the stage, but they definitely don't write the whole play. And this right here perfectly captures that huge shift in thinking. We've moved away from this old idea of genetic destiny, this belief that our fate is basically sealed from birth. Now we talk about genetic influence. Our genes give us a starting point, right? A set of tendencies. But the final story of who we become is shaped by this constant dance between our genes and our life experiences. So, if the brain is the hardware and our genes are just the starting code, what's the missing link? How does life experience actually connect with our DNA? This is where our understanding has totally exploded in recent years. Let's see how it all fits together. The secret ingredient here is a field called epigenetics. And here's the absolute key takeaway. This all happens without changing your actual DNA. Your genes aren't getting rewritten. Instead, your life experiences can add these little chemical tags onto your DNA. And those tags act like switches, telling your genes to turn on or off. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a dimmer switch for your genes. So you've got a gene just sitting there, ready to do its job. Then an experience happens, let's say a really stressful period in your life. That experience can trigger a tiny molecule, a methyl group, to get stuck onto that gene. And just like that, the gene's activity gets dimmed or maybe even switched off entirely. Your life is literally flipping switches on your DNA. And this isn't just a cool theory, okay? The research here is incredibly clear. Just look at this. For PTSD, we can now see that childhood trauma can change the dimmer switch on a gene called FKBP5, and that directly increases a person's risk for the disorder. For major depression, a super important gene for brain health called BDNF can get dimmed, which makes it harder for the brain to adapt and change. These are actual molecular footprints that our experiences leave behind. So the crucial takeaway here is this. What happens to you, especially when you're young, doesn't just create memories in your mind. Can physically change how your genetic blueprint works for years, maybe even for the rest of your life. In a very, very real sense, your biography becomes your biology. Now, if our biology isn't fixed, if it can be changed by our experiences, well,
that changes everything about how we think about mental health and treatment. And that brings us to what the future psychiatry might look like. It means we can finally start moving towards something called precision psychiatry. Think about it. Instead of a one size fits all treatment plan, we can start to tailor therapies by looking at a person's unique mix of genes, their life story, and those epigenetic marks. It's healthcare that actually sees the whole person. Possibilities here are just mind blowing. We could use these epigenetic markers to predict who might be most at risk after a traumatic event. We could develop drugs that directly target and maybe even reverse some of these epigenetic changes. In fact, they're already testing inhibitors for that FKBP5 gene in clinical trials. We could even personalize therapy, knowing exactly which biological pathways have been affected by someone's life. And that leaves us with one last really powerful idea to think about. For so long, we've thought of our genes as this unchangeable, fixed thing. But epigenetics tells a completely different story. It shows us that our biology is dynamic, it's responsive, can be reshaped. So, if our negative experiences can leave a physical mark, it raises an incredibly hopeful question. What kinds of positive experiences, therapies, and environments could help us rewrite our biology for the better?